Okay, thank you. And thank you for everybody attending. Today is a special board meeting. We'll go ahead as normal. Notice is hereby given of the special board meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 12 p.m. on the afternoon of August 3rd, 2020. The board meeting will be held via an online platform which can be accessed through WebEx, and if you need instructions, they are on the district website. You can follow them and sign on with us. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business to come properly before the board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Wednesday, July 29th, 2020, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education, located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Tap Into Westfield, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Dana, may we have a roll call?
Michael Beelan.
Here.
Kent Diamond.
Here.
Brendan Galligan.
Here.
Albert Garrison.
Here.
Ryan Morrissey.
Here.
Gretchen Oleg.
Here.
Tara Porto.
Here.
Oster.
Here.
Amy Root.
Here.
Great. Thank you, Dana. Sarah, would you like to lead us in a flag salute?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America
and
and to the republic for which it
stands
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Sarah. I think we have a couple of announcements. Let's start with you, Amy.
All righty. Mine is about a local charity. Walk in Sunshine is a local charity founded last year by Westfield residents Lou and Francine Magrone to help parents who have lost a child. Through generous donations, Walk in Sunshine affords financial resources to New Jersey families and online resources to families around the world through its website, www.walkinsunshinecharity.org. The charity is looking for a few tech-savvy high school students who may need volunteer hours and or may be touched by the subject of child loss to help with basic website services to improve their site. Any interested student should contact Lou Magrone at walkinsunshinecharity@gmail.com. That's it.
Thank you, Amy. Gretchen, I believe you have an announcement also.
I do. So the following 10 Westfield residents have declared their candidacy for 3 seats on the Board of Education. Sahar Aziz, Priti Dave, Kent Diamond, Deborah Feldman Khan, Paul Manuski, Lila Morelli, Sonal Patel, Eldanidia Payan, and I really apologize for that, Wendy Rogers and David Sexton. I'm sorry, I didn't have the phonetical spellings of those names, so hopefully I didn't butcher it too bad. The 2 board members whose 3-year terms are expiring on December 31st, 2020 are Kent Diamond and Peggy Oster, and additionally, the 1-year unexpired term held by Brian Morrissey will expire on December 31st, 2020, creating a 3-year seat on the November ballot. Mrs. Oster and Mr. Morrissey are not running for re-election. Information regarding the Board of Education Candidates Night, which is sponsored by the Parent Teacher Council, will be communicated soon, and the general election will be on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. I have to say it's exciting that there are so many people interested, and I wish everyone the very best. Of course, Peggy and Brian, we will be really sad to see you go at the end of the year, but more on that later. Thanks.
Thank you, Gretchen. And I, too, am very excited to see so many people come out. I have truly enjoyed my time on the board, have learned a lot, but due to some my business and my family, time is getting a little short for me, so I was not able to run this year. But I do thank all of these people to come forward and, wish you the best in the election process. My last announcement, for today is our next scheduled meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Tuesday, September 1st at 7:30 p.m. The location is to be determined as we continue to monitor public health conditions and state restrictions. If the meeting is virtual, instruction for the public regarding remote access on the district website at www.westfieldnjk12.org under the Board tab. The complete agenda of the meeting will be available on Friday, August 28th, also under the Board tab of the district website. So we'll see where we are as the month continues to progress. So at this time, we normally recognize the public for agenda items only. But since most of our agenda is going to deal with Dr. Dolan's presentation on the Restore and Recovery plan for the school system, I would ask that people hold their questions till the end of the meeting so that maybe Dr. Dolan will have answered some of your questions as she does the presentation. If you do have questions and you want to begin to type them at this point in time, you can, get some of the work put together ahead of time for when we get to the end of the meeting. So at this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Dolan for her to do her Restart and Recovery Plan summation for everybody.
Thank you. So I am sure that we all agree on what the perfect restart plan would be for the Westfield Public Schools. Parents, students, teachers, administrators, board members, we would all want school to return to normal starting in September. We all join in that. Unfortunately, we all recognize that that is not possible at this time. So at this moment, all school districts are awaiting guidance from public health officials and the governor as to whether we can open with a hybrid plan or whether we will return to full distance learning for all students in September. Now, while we await that announcement, public school districts are required to submit a plan for our hybrid learning. This will be my focus this afternoon. Let me explain. We've had a cast of thousands working cooperatively to develop this plan. Our work isn't done, but I would like to thank the health professionals, the board members, the administrators, teachers, parents, association and community members, and maintenance experts who shared their areas of expertise to help us make the best decisions possible in an impossible situation. I've asked a few district employees to join us this afternoon. Sean MacArthur, who is the head of Buildings and Grounds, Brian Auker, who is the head of Technology, Marius Fendis, the principal of Westfield High School, Crystal Marsh, the assistant principal at Edison, and Susie Hung, the principal at Jefferson.
You joined via phone.
As we embarked on our work, we established guiding principles because, as you can imagine, it is a daunting task. I want to stress that the first principle is health and safety in all of our conversations. So since that is where we started, not only with our public health officials, doctor and nurses, but we also started with those who are in charge of the cleanliness of our buildings. So I'd like to ask Sean MacArthur, head of Buildings and Grounds, to share the work completed to date and the work we will be doing when schools reopen. Sean?
Sure, Dr. Dolan, thank you very much. So I'd like to just share a little bit as the pandemic came through in March for all of us to deal with. We went to strictly a top to bottom cleaning in all of our buildings, making sure that every nook and cranny, every surface was treated. So we went through utilizing our products, our hydrogen peroxide, which is a great cleaner. It's a multi-surface cleaner, taking care of things, going through and disinfecting the entire schools and buildings to make sure that everything from any type of bacteria, germs, or viruses was completely eliminated if the possibility was there. So we continue to do that as we've done throughout the entire time we've been out of school to continue multiple times cleaning, multiple times wiping things down. As we go forward, we have other items that we're enhancing with our HVAC systems, items that use and utilize ultraviolet rays to kill off bacteria, germs, and viruses, anything of that nature, mold, mildews, anything you could think of, to create a better, much better indoor air quality for the schools themselves, as well as all the buildings in the district. So we're going to continue to do those things. The district has given approval for purchasing all different types of items to enhance our cleaning capabilities as well as our disinfecting capabilities. We're going to continue to utilize that equipment as well as all of our supplies for disinfection to make sure we create this healthy learning environment for children and also their safety at the utmost, making sure that we continue to do that on a daily basis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So for a moment, I just want everyone to stop for a minute. We've been thinking about this a long time, but not everybody has been. What does school look like during this time, right? And what we did was we've spoken with, we've certainly read what the CDC has. We've listened to state health department representatives. We've spoken with our local public health. We've spoken with our school physician, our coordinator of nursing, and our nurses. So the entire concept of school and a school day has to change. So some small examples of this. So we're looking for small cohorts of students with a limited number of adults, as much as possible. That certainly is more difficult in certain age groups. We're looking at staggered starts and dismissals. We're looking at students and staff wearing masks. We're looking for things like hand sanitizers available. We're looking for student desks socially distanced in the classroom, and as possible, changing hallways and stairways to one direction, not using items like lockers or other items where many hands can touch the items. And we're also looking at something very different for Westfield. We're looking at no visitors to the schools. We love our tradition of having our parents, our community involved in our schools. It makes our schools so rich. But we're not looking at that this year. We are not looking at visitors coming to our schools. We are looking at completely limiting that. So I am going to get to the hybrid schedule, but let me give you some few examples of our thought processes as we did this. So we started with CDC and New Jersey Department of Health guidance. They certainly stress social distancing of 6 feet. So we measured our rooms and we determined how many students and desks can be in a room with everybody socially distanced. That led us to divide our regular classroom enrollments into A and B groups so that social distancing in classrooms is possible. We heard from public health, perhaps the highest risk activity would be students eating lunch, whether in a classroom or in a cafeteria. We looked at the state guidance. State guidance says we have to have a minimum of a 4-hour day in order to have a hybrid. So we looked at the schedules we already have in place for early dismissal days. They are basically based on a 4-hour schedule. We looked at a certain point at having half days. Have a half day in the morning for the A group and a half day in the afternoon for the B group. When we looked at this and we looked at our schools, we did not believe it possible for our custodial class to properly clean the classrooms in between the morning and the afternoon. There was not sufficient time to make sure things were cleaned and disinfected. We considered A students coming in for a full week. We also considered A students coming in on Monday and Tuesday, with B students coming in on Thursday and Friday. But with both of these schedules, we were concerned at every level that there was too long a period of time when students would not be interacting in person with the schools. Which is why we basically came up with a plan, a hybrid schedule. Let me do 6 through 12, grades 6 through 12 first, where students who are designated as in the A group would come on Monday, students in the B group would come on Tuesday. Grades 6 through 12, Wednesday would be a virtual day for all students. Thursday would be A, and Friday would be B. Here's a really important part of this. On the A days, the students who are in the B group are expected to log into class at the beginning of the day and at the beginning of every period. In the afternoon, teachers will have office hours for individual students or groups of students. The same would be true of the A students. They'd be required to log on B days. The classes, the lessons, will be live streamed for the students who are home. I just saw a note that said, why can't we hear the panelists? Can they hear me? Yes, okay, all right, I'll keep going. Now the schedule for pre-K to 5 is similar, but at this point it's not exact. It would be the same as the upper grades on Monday. That Monday would be an A day, Tuesday would be a B day, Thursday would be an A day, Friday would be a B day. The difference is Wednesday. At this point, what we heard from parents and teachers actually was that a lot of our younger students had more difficulty with the distance learning than our older students. So what our plan is as of now is to have that Wednesday be a flipped and an alternative day. First week, the A students would come for a third day of school on Wednesday. The following week, it would be the B students. Similar to what I said before, on those Wednesdays, the other group would still be logging in to have lessons, to understand the assignments, and there would be opportunities for office hours. So clearly, as I described it, a key part of our plan will depend on technology. So I'd like to ask Brian Auker, the head of our technology department, to speak for a moment about some of the work going on.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Okay, good afternoon. So as Dr. Dolan said, technology is going to be extremely important as we resume our learning this fall. And of course, as Sean pointed out, safety is our greatest concern for all of the students and of course all of our staff. Currently, the district utilizes a model where we have Chromebooks located in carts that are shared between classrooms or are positioned in classrooms, and the students all share those devices. The greatest problem that we would have is trying to disinfect all those devices as multiple students are touching the surfaces of the carts themselves and the Chromebooks. So out of that concern, we have decided to take all the Chromebooks that the district currently has and distribute them on a one-to-one basis to all students in grades 1 through 12. This will provide access to students who may not have a device, but it also provides a device to each student so they can bring it into school, use it in class, take it home, have access to it at home. So we are providing these devices. However, due to some older machines that we've had to retire, we have an order for an additional 1,000 new Chromebooks on order. As you can imagine right now, getting a hold of technology devices is extremely difficult since the majority of them or the components to create them are manufactured in China. So our order has been delayed. However, we currently expect it to arrive the first week of school. So we may have some difficulty initially getting devices out to all students. And I have spoken with Mrs. Esfendis at the high school, the principal, and she has agreed to go bring your own device at the high school, and we'll provide devices to all students from grades 1 through 8 initially. And then when the new devices come in, we'll distribute them throughout the district. So again, all of our students are provided with devices. So that's our plan for the fall.
Thank you, Brian. I noticed there are some questions coming up about the length of the school day, so I'm going to just reiterate that. And then I'm also going to ask our 3 school administrators who are on board maybe to speak a little bit about what the schedule for their level school will be. But first, just to reiterate, because public health informed us that one of the riskiest things we could do would be to have people eating together. That means we're not having lunch. Without having lunch, the days are 4-hour days. They are the 4-hour days we have had in the past for early dismissal days. They're just about exact to that. And now if either Mary, Crystal, or Susie might want to just explain a little bit about how the schedules are planned at each level of our school district.
I guess I can start. So at the high school, as you can imagine, the challenge of a school of almost 2,000 students to figure out how to socially distance was a big challenge for us. So what our schedule will look like, as lunch was a period that we needed to eliminate, we are going to be doing longer sessions, so it minimizes students travel in the hallways. So we'll have 4 classes per day, and we'll rotate through that schedule through the week. So we would have 1 through 4 will go the first day, then the second group of students will get periods 1 through 4 in person. We'll have that virtual day, and then on Thursday we'll go 5 through 8 for Group A and 5 through 8 for Group B in person for those days. So we thought that was the best way that we could keep our students safe, limiting as many other students as possible. We've also increased the transition time from class to class so that there should be less students in the hallway, staggering our dismissal from class in addition to staggering the dismissal from the building during the day. We're trying to do all of those things to kind of limit the contact with the rest of the students.
Mary, I just saw a question that popped up about science labs, and I know you've discussed that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So because science is a 6-credit course as opposed to a 5-credit course, there's an extra period during the week. What we are going to do with that is during the office hour time, the science teachers will be doing an extra session. So because it's a longer block during the school day, those lab type activities can happen in a longer period, and then they'll have an extra teaching session 1 afternoon a week for each science course. As far as the safety of those lab sessions, we're going to be rethinking all areas of curriculum and instruction as well, so that there may be less hands-on activities and keeping students out of lab groups and things like that. That was more related to the science question.
Thank you. Crystal?
Yep, and at the intermediate level, we're doing some of the same structures as the high school. So we're lengthening our periods so that there's 4.5 periods in a day instead of our typical 9. So Monday and Tuesday, it'll be 1 through 4.5, 5.5, 1, 2, 3, 4, half of 5. And then Thursday and Friday will be 6, 7, 8, 9, and the other half of 5. And we thought having period 5 every day was a really nice way to do it, because that's typically our 6th grade lunch and lunch study. And since those students didn't have a time to do a lot of the transition to middle school events, we can do some of the social emotional learning, team building things during that period 5 time. But with the longer block schedules, there'll be less movement of students throughout the day, keeping safety at the forefront of all of our planning. So 1, 2, 3, 4, half of 5, Monday and Tuesday for the A and B. Remote Wednesday, it would be a half-day schedule, so all 9 periods, 25-minute periods, just like on a typical day before Thanksgiving kind of schedule. For Wednesday, everyone logging on, and then Thursday and Friday back to the rotations with 6, 7, 8, 9.
Thank you. And so just to be clear, I can't read all the questions right now, but we will get to them. Some of them are pretty specific, so please understand a few things. This afternoon after this meeting, I'm going to be sending out a notice to all parents explaining in general the plan, and also having a link to the entire plan for those who want to read the 58 pages required by the state. You're certainly welcome to do that. So we'll be sending that out. Additionally, as we move forward, the principals will be sending out information with details. I do realize that parents have to plan. I realize that every parent has a different type of scheduling problem. So we realize the importance of getting this information out to you. I may even try to talk a little slower because evidently I've been confusing people. So I'll try to be clear as we go forward. Let me just bring up one important thing. So one thing we definitely heard, just an easy question I could do in a minute. One question we definitely heard was that some of our students who have more significant disabilities, they and their families really struggled. They tried hard, but it was challenging. Right? So what we're trying to do is, we're still working on this, is those students who are in self-contained classes, those classes are in Lincoln, Tamaulipas, McKinley, Wilson, and Edison, they have small numbers, and we're hoping we're going to be able to bring in those classes for more days. Either 4 or 5 days, we'll be able to have those students come in for the 4-hour block to have the support that we believe that they need. So that's something that's important to us, and we are certainly working on it. I saw one question from a parent. I've heard it before. It makes perfect sense. Those parents who have multiple children, some of them for childcare are going to want all their children to come in on A days, right? And then there are other ones who might want to be home for one of the children, and they might want them on different teams. That will be part of the survey. So parents who have multiple children will be asked whether you want your children on the same team or whether you want a particular child on a different team for whatever reason you have. So we're trying to accommodate there. A really important part, the governor has made it clear that whatever hybrid the districts are offering, parents can choose that their children go to school completely remotely, right? That is certainly the case. The governor has made that clear. So the survey that will be going out in the next few days will ask you whether you want your child to go to school remotely or use the hybrid. If students who go remotely will be logging on both A days and B days, they will have access to the teachers during the office hours or for small or individual instruction. And we also know that life, especially these days, is not particularly predictable, right? It seems to me that things change constantly. So we're putting in place a system for, let's just say you first choose to have your child go in the hybrid system, right? And you fill out the survey and you say their child is going to go in the hybrid system. But for whatever reason, your childcare or your work changes, you need to switch to the fully remote. That one's pretty easy. We just need a few days notice from you, and we can switch and change where the child is registered in our system, right? From hybrid to remote. That's easy. Here's the one that's a little bit harder. Let's just say, I don't know, I have 100 children in one school and they are all remote. I can't switch that easily to move those 100 kids back into the hybrid, right? Because I'd have class sizes that weren't socially distancing. So we are asking to give us like a 2-week lead so we can figure out if you started remote and you want to come back, that's fine. We'd love to have you. We just need time to make sure that we have the right number of students in each class and that we have social distancing that is required and should be there. So again, I want to stress before we can get to some questions or other comments, but I want to stress that information is going out to every parent this afternoon, every staff member this afternoon, and it will have a link to the full plan. Additionally, we know there are going to be questions. We're planning for it. There should be questions. And so we will have on our website, we will have frequently asked questions as we start to hear from parents. We will add those to our frequently asked questions. So Mrs. Oster, as the board president, I'll pause as of now and see if you or board members have questions first.
I just was going to, Brendan, I see you raise your hand. So the virtual kids will sign in for 4 days worth of classes on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Is that correct?
No, the students are completely remote. Is that what you said?
Completely remote, yes.
They will sign in for 5 days.
For 5 days.
For 5 days.
Right. So they go ahead.
And A students will sign in for 3 days and B students will sign in for 3 days. The other 2 days, they will be in person. So every student will be involved every day, either by hybrid or remote, but every day.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Brendan, you had a question?
Yeah, Dr. Dolan, could you go a little bit more into detail as to what the virtual day will look like for the students, or the day will look like for students that are logging in virtually to a class that's in session? So not the Wednesday, but the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Will the students be live streamed into a classroom? Will they be able to interact with their classmates, or will it just be a one-way communication with questions followed up later?
So Mary or Crystal, would you like to address?
Yep, I can take that one. So for the students who are logging in at home, let's say, the middle school schedule where they have 4.5 periods, they'll log in, they'll do, whatever the warm-up activity is for the class, they'll get the mini lesson, Since they'll be online, if there's a discussion, they can go into breakout rooms with their classmates facilitated by the teacher. And then when they get to the independent work portion, then they can log off. And just as their peers in class would be doing, then they could complete the independent work. It's just kind of a general sort of framework. So they'll be there as participants in the class. And then when they get to the independent portion, then they can log off and do that. And then they'll have that opportunity in the afternoon. If they had any follow-up questions on the independent work or assignments, then they can check in with the teachers after the school day, after the in-person or till 12:30 time.
Excellent. So there will be a chance for a back and forth during the interactive portion?
Yep.
Excellent.
And I would also say that teachers have volunteered to work with us to make this system work as well as it possibly can. So even this week, we've already done some trials to see how this will work, but we're working on it again. And later on in the meeting, I'm asking for a bit of a calendar change because we want the teachers to have 2 days of professional development before we start this. And that'll be one of the things that is addressed so that all teachers have an understanding of how this can work effectively for all students.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
I have one other question and clarification. So it seemed, I think, Crystal, you mentioned that the students will have their regular schedules from periods 1 through 9. If a child happens to have a study in that 1 to 9 period of time for both middle school or high school, what happens to them while they're in school for that period that they don't really have a classroom?
So for the middle school, that lunch period that's still sort of scheduled in the day, we're going to be using that more of the lunch study, which sometimes happens after they eat where they go, and it's a chance for them to do work. And also check in with the teacher since the teacher is assigned to them that period. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be using that time for some of our social emotional learning check-ins and activities of those sorts. Having our guidance counselors do some activities with the students during that time as well. So even though that lunch period is still scheduled into their day, they are assigned to a teacher, and we will be using that time strategically as we need it.
At the high school, it's kind of a different beast because we do have true free periods at the high school. So this is going to be a little bit of a culture shift for us because as we have students, and if there is an outbreak, we need to know where they are. A free period, kids really need to be scheduled for free periods. So as opposed to a free period at the high school, it's going to become a study hall, a scheduled study hall in a classroom, socially distanced, just small group study halls, as opposed to true free periods that we've had in the past. And the hope is there will be less of those because the lunch period has been taken out of the students' schedule. So hopefully they'll have less free periods during their days. Additionally, at the high school, we've always allowed students who don't have a class at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day to come in late or go home early. And we think that'll actually really benefit us with this because it'll further stagger out the start times and hopefully have less students in the building those first and last period of the day.
Great, thank you. I see a note here. Dr. Dolan, was Dr. Hung in on the call to talk about the classes in elementary school?
I believe she is now on the call.
Yeah, she's connected by phone, I believe she said.
So did she want to talk a little bit about how she sees elementary school going?
Let's see. Susie, are you there? I don't know what else to say.
Susie, you're still muted.
Unmute.
Dr. Hung, we can see you. Oh, there you go.
I still can't hear her speaking now.
We still can't hear.
So maybe as we continue to ask questions, if Dr. Hung gets her voices back again on the computer, she can jump in at that point in time to give her summation of elementary school. So I think, Michael, you had a question also?
Yes, it was really touching on following up on Brendan's question as far as student experience. When the student is remote, what would we expect them to see in their remote session? Would it be rotating between the teacher and the blackboard? Just trying to understand how the remote experience would be from a student perspective.
So we were actually doing some experimenting earlier today. So yeah, a combination of, the teacher's instructions, the board. We were trying to see how far away the computer could be placed so they could still see what's on the board. And then they can use the technology to do breakout rooms, so they can still have conversations with their peers that are in, that class period. But a combination of things. It could be watching, a video presented by the teacher. So it can be a combination of things. But the goal is that it's as similar as possible to what's happening in person in the class, and that they are actively engaged as well.
And will the sessions be recorded so they're accessible later if the student needs to go back?
That's a good question. I don't know if we've reached a consensus on that one yet.
Okay. And then final question I had, I'll let you answer that.
I just agree that it's on the question list.
Okay. And then the other one is just, I know we're putting the survey out as far as whether students want to be remote or in person. What if we have a larger percentage of students that want to be in person? How will we handle that from a capacity standpoint?
Actually, we think we'll be okay with that.
Okay.
I also noted there was a question, I don't see all the questions, but there was a question about why didn't we survey before? I will say that I certainly have spoken with my colleagues across the state. Some districts have already surveyed 5 times. And shockingly, if you had asked parents, and people did in June, do you want your kids to go back to school in September? They said yes. And then as the news changed, then the numbers changed. So that's why we didn't survey before. What matters is right now, it's August. People know what the actualities are, and now is the time to find out whether people feel comfortable sending their students, if in fact we're allowed to open or not.
And
Sorry. It's Susie Hung. I'm in, finally. Sorry, I apologize for my tardiness, but I have been listening in through Miss Marsh's phone, so I was waiting to get let in, so I finally got let in. And there's definitely some questions here regarding the elementary plan. As you all know, we all work together on this, so it's going to sound very similar. It's going to be a compacted day with no lunch, and all the students will be logging in from home, the ones that are on the, the alternating day. And we look forward to seeing the kids because, it's really important for their emotional well-being. And we know that, many districts, there's all different types of plans that are out there that are being released. But there's a lot of thought that was put into this plan and working with all the administrators and with Dr. Dolan. In terms of the requirements, we did do all the measurements, as Dr. Nolan mentioned earlier, and making sure that we can fit, about half of a class in the classroom, anywhere from 10 to 12 kids with 6 feet distance as well, and making sure that, all of our students and teachers and everyone are protecting themselves by wearing a mask. We will do our best to keep the kids in the classroom so that there is less movement throughout the building. And when needed, the teachers will go into the classroom for any changes. There was a question also here about IEP implementations. That will be no issue as well. We will continue with, whatever is written in the IEP. If there were changes that needed to be made, I'm sure that will be coming later. However, our plan does include and support the students that have their IEP accommodations.
Dr. Hung.
Hi.
Hi. In the elementary school, kids have their own desks assigned to them. Is that going to be the case going forward, or are we going to be clearing out the classrooms to make the space?
Right. So most of the schools have student desks. At Jefferson, we have mainly tables, but we were able to order desks for our classrooms. And so each child, when they come in, will have their own individual space as well. And it is expected that the kids will keep their belongings in their backpacks because, as the governor tells us, we have to have a plan where it can pivot at any time. So, we don't want to send the kids home and then they all have all their stuff at school and then they can't come back to school to get it.
Thank you.
Sure.
And also, I just wanted to clarify, I think it may be a little different than where we were in the spring. Dr. Dolan, we are going to be taking attendance.
Absolutely. I'm sorry.
And that's fine. It's who's ever can answer. So attendance will be taken every day. And if we find that students are not attending regularly like they would in regular school, we will be addressing that. Is that
Yes. So when the students are on the computers, they will be logging in and the teachers will be taking attendance. So if there is a, a change in terms of maybe there's a break, whether it's a recess break or whatever it is, and there's a change, the kids need to log back in after that 5-minute or 10-minute break, whatever it is. And the teachers will continue to take attendance throughout the course of the day. There was a question earlier about, whether there's going to be interaction with the students that are on the screen. There probably will be minimal interaction because of the fact that the teachers will be focusing on the 10 to 12 kids that are in front of them. And then in the afternoon, I think as Ms. Marsh had mentioned earlier, is that the teachers would have FaceTime in the afternoon with those kids that were remote and be able to support them as well.
I see a question come across about will in the elementary school, will the day include both academics and the extras such as art, music, I guess gym and
Yes, we are definitely talking about a plan. We haven't finalized the plan as to exactly what that looks like, but we do believe that it's important to continue to embed that into the school day.
Great.
Peggy, just to your point, in the policy that I'm going to ask the board to approve when we get to policies in the agenda, under remote learning, one phrase, students will have the same expectations for attendance, participation, and completion of assignments as those attending in person.
Right. Everyone will be, they will have a Chromebook, as Mr. Alker had mentioned earlier, and everybody will be logging into Google Classroom. So every student will be held accountable for participation as well as work completion.
Great. I also see a comment on here asking, and because we're 2 pages long, I don't know if he's not on my main screen, but is Dr. Weissman there? And could he say a couple words about how he envisions some of the special education situations to be held? Okay, so maybe we can come back to Dr. Weissman and see if we can get him to make some comments a little bit further down in the meeting, if that's okay with everybody. Do any other board members have questions or clarifications that they would like to discuss?
I think Dr. and administrators and all the staff, I know this is the first time that we're discussing this plan publicly and the information about the parents shortly. But there were, I believe, 3 or 4 restart committee meetings that both Ken and I as board members are on, and very informative. So there's some great questions today, and I know it's actually the first time that a lot of the board members are actually seeing some of this information or hearing some of this info, or maybe just got it on Friday, I guess it was. I do appreciate all the time and efforts put in, and it's a working document. These are the policies. It's required by the state. I'm not sure if Dr. Dolan mentioned that, but each school district has to send to the state their restart plan, and that's what the first piece of the puzzle is. Here's this plan going forward, and it is a working, breathable document. There are a number of things I'm sure that the district will change and pivot as we gain experience as we reopen, as well as any further state guidance. And there are a lot of states around the country that start school this week, or it started school today. So we'll also learn from the experiences of other school districts around the country too. So it is definitely something that a lot of hours have been spent in preparing this document, but many more, I'm sure, as we go along. So I want to thank the district and Dr. Dolan and everyone for their input.
Right, and I agree with Rob. I know the time and the effort that Dr. Dolan and her staff have put into this document and plan, and also know the number of times that directives from the state, listening to the community and so forth, how it has changed and we've adapted. And this plan is required by the state for us to put forth. I don't know the exact date. Dr. Dolan can forward that. I did see a comment that talked about if less than 12 kids are coming into the school, could kids come more often if, say, only 5 kids opted for the hybrid program? I'm going to answer that to the same concept is I think that we have to wait and see how many kids sign up for hybrid, how many kids sign up for virtual. and give it a little bit of time to really plan, because as Dr. Dolan said, we are leaving in there in our policy that parents can change from a virtual learning experience to a hybrid learning experience. You know, each of those take a little bit of time for us to adjust. But at this point in time, I think we just have to wait, see what we get back from the community, do our planning, and see what the numbers give us before we could truly answer that question. Dr. Dolan, if you have more to add to that, that would be great.
No, I would agree with you. I have gotten emails from parents with very specific situations. As always, if there are ways where we can accommodate a bit more, we will try to do that. But you're right, we have to see what the numbers are and progress from there, and see what the decisions are also at the state level, right? That impacts us greatly, and we'll see what happens there as well.
I don't know how, Brian, maybe you can help out. I see there's another question up here. Will elementary teachers be expected to create lessons individually or in teams? So I don't know if Dr. Hung, you'd like to handle that one. But then my next question will be, I'm sure I've missed a couple in the chat. Can we at some point in time go back and see other questions that we might not have answered?
Hi.
Maybe, could we just clarify too that although people at the bottom of their screen have a chat option and then a Q&A option, the Q&A option is where the three little dots are at the bottom next to the chat feature. The chat feature is kind of distracting because it pops up right in front of everybody, but we'll get to the questions in the Q&A section as well at some point in the meeting. And I know Brian earlier had said it would really be preferred if people could put their questions in the Q&A section, which again is next to the chat bubble where the little three dots are. That's where you get to the Q&A thing. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. Great. Dr. Hung, we were back to, are the lessons going to be done on a team basis? Right,
Hi. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So yes. So within each grade level, at least per building, we'd like them to kind of work very closely together so that they are all aligned, especially in terms of progressing in the curriculum. We don't need, one class being, too far ahead or one class being too far behind. It's really important because, one of the things that we consider is that should staff members become ill, we want to make sure that we can quickly be able to continue with the learning and be able to, for the teachers to support one another. In the spring, there were different models. There were teachers that, pre-recorded many of their own lessons. And as you all know, that is, takes an inordinate amount of time. And through this, we had talked about, if we were to do it again, we did talk about maybe each teacher taking on a subject as well and being, an expert in that particular area and be able to share pre-recorded lessons as well as doing some of that live instruction. And there's one question also here in the Q&A about afternoon student and the afternoon, what the elementary students will be doing. I mentioned earlier that for the remote group, they would be able to interact with the teacher in the afternoon for anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on the day. But also in the afternoon, there's also possibility of doing some of those specials that was brought up earlier.
Also, I see a question here that is, a specific question for a particular family, and I would suggest whoever asked about teachers who teach out of district, I would suggest that you pose that directly to Dr. Dolan because it has a small number of people that would affect the answer one way or the other. So, so do we have, Brian, can you see a list of the Q&As that came before us or do they disappear?
I can see all of them, but we're currently up to 242 questions.
Okay. So
we could certainly use that as a start for our Q&A on the website. I don't know if that would make everyone, it seems to me that way everyone could see all the questions and the answers.
Peggy, if you click on the three dots next to where you'd mute your microphone, there's an option to pull up the Q&A at the top of that little drop-down list. And then you can see all 240 questions.
Okay, let me. So, well, how about this? How about we continue with the rest of the meeting, and I'll see if I can pull up the options and a couple more questions. And if people have more questions, we can come back to where our normal question and answer portion is before we close for the meeting.
I have a question. Do we want to talk about face shield coverings and temperature takings and all that? So parents can hear what the thinking is for that.
Sure, certainly an important part of this. The expectation in all of the schools in Westfield is that all staff members will have masks on and all students will have masks on. I do understand that we have some students, perhaps some students with significant needs where this will be more of a challenge. I've reached out to some specialized schools and they've given me some resources for parents and teachers to share and principals to share with parents about how to help some students get more acclimated with it. But I also understand it's a specific challenge for some children. If there are any doctor's notes that are saying a person can't wear a mask, those will be reviewed by our school physician. But anything in person truly is predicated the importance of everyone wearing masks. I will say that our 12-month employees have been back full-time since July 6th. Nobody has a problem wearing a mask. Everybody is following all of the rules, and we believe that we can do that going forward. Your second part, yes, the taking of the temperatures. So we've worked with the health community on this. Some of you know that some of our high school athletes have been following the requirements for NJSIAA for a few weeks. And every morning they come and work in groups of pods outdoors, and they have a form that parents have to fill out attesting to the fact that the children are well, right? And there's a checklist and temperatures are taken. The coaches who are in this program do the very same thing. And working with the public health, the suggestion is that we do the same. We are now working on a form that parents would be able to have on their phones or whatever device they wanted on, where every morning, and again, public health reiterated this with me just this past Friday, every morning we would be asking parents to acknowledge that the children are well and they don't have any of these symptoms, and that also the parents would take the child's temperature and input it into the program. And we would be checking that every day. This only works if everybody is honest. And I can't imagine who would not be honest with an illness or disease rather like this. It truly is, life depends on it, right? So, but I will say, if we do have any parents who take this lightly, if the form isn't filled out, students can't enter the building. If the staff member doesn't fill it out, staff members can't enter the building. And if someone knowingly sends in someone who is ill, then anyone in that family is going to lose their ability to come into the hybrid system. We have to do that. This is just too important. And I know just about everyone I've ever met in Westfield would follow the requirements, but we have to make sure that absolutely everybody does.
Thank you. I just saw a couple, it's scrolling through some of the questions, Dr. Dolan. The choice as to whether or not, if you have multiple children and you can choose whether you want them on the same team or different teams, that will also occur across schools, not just if you have a first and a third grader, but if you have a fifth and a seventh and a 12th grader, it'll go across schools also.
That is correct. That is correct. That's already been being worked on, yes.
Okay. I also saw a question in reference to, will the elementary students be required to log in the afternoon? So if you are in the hybrid program, do you have to log in the afternoon, or is that a voluntary situation?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yes, so the kids on the, if they're not in school that you know, for the compressed day, they are required to log in the afternoon to meet with their teachers.
Okay, and what about at the high school and the middle school?
So at the intermediate level, the students who are remote, we definitely want them to come into the PM sessions to check in and get any questions answered. And for students who are in person, we strongly encourage it so that they can get any questions that they have answered as well.
The high school is similar. We're not going to require those office hours. And a big reason for that is that the science lab will be taking place during those hours. So if a student is scheduled for a science lab on any given day, they will be required to log into that for class attendance. But otherwise, those office hours are strongly recommended for the students who didn't attend live that day or the students who are fully virtual.
Okay, and I guess I see one other question here because I could probably scroll for about an hour here. When you get to some place like the high school and the middle school, how are we going to work to make sure the kids are not congregating together outside school or when they leave and so forth? Will they have staggering times to leave school, or how is that going to work?
At the intermediate level, we're staggering the entrances. So each grade will have 2 entrances to the building so that the half of the grade that's, in person that day will have 2 doors to enter through to prevent that kind of bottleneck that happens at the doors in the morning. So each grade, they'll be spread out around the building to help prevent that in the morning. And then we're working on staggering the changing of periods during the day so that there aren't, the full group of students in the hallway at the same time, and dismissal as well, working on which doors they'll leave out of so that there's not a big group congregating at dismissal or arrival.
And at the high school, we formerly had 2 doors that students were allowed to enter in the building. We're spacing it out to 4 and having students enter the building nearest to where their first period of the classes of the day. I did mention earlier those students who don't have a first period or whatever period starts the day, they won't need to come in those periods, as well as students leaving after their last scheduled class of the day. We think that will help. And it also will be a big, it's going to be a staffing thing. We're going to need to be present outside, certainly outside the front of the school and the rear entrances, just to make sure that students are doing what they need to do. Morning time at the high school is usually pretty staggered. As a general rule, there's not a lot of congregating because students can enter kind of rolling. In the afternoon out on the front lawn, that's going to be an area where we're going to need some staff to monitor and support kids in making the right choices.
Great. And then I think that Dr. Dolan has a great idea that since there are a lot of questions, and as long as we can see these questions after the meeting is over, if we can summarize those and send them out as part of the frequently asked questions, I think that would be great. The only other question I see here that people are confused about is at the intermediate level, are the students changing classes?
So at the intermediate level, they are changing classes. The periods are longer, so there's less transitions throughout the day, but they will be changing classes. The passing period itself is longer to accommodate the one-way hallways and one-way staircases. So they will have longer amount of time to get to their next class, help them move safely throughout the building.
Okay, so if the other members of the board are okay with it, I was going to, oh, Amy, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just one quick question. I have seen sort of a collection of questions about what happens at Lincoln School. And since the parents of our youngest learners are probably as anxious and perhaps less experienced in how things typically work, Dr. Dolan, or maybe Dr. Hung, could you just sort of sketch out briefly maybe how things are going to work at Lincoln School for the students there?
Sure.
There's been questions about the RAP particularly too.
Okay. There's no doubt that the Lincoln schedule is one of the most challenging, right? There are so many different programs there. There are full day programs, there are half day programs, different start and end times with it. So basically, a student who is in a full day program, there are a few classes that are full day, they would basically have 4-hour days. The students who are in half day programs would have about a little over half of that. And there will be a wrap, yes. And truthfully, I think because there are so many different programs in Lincoln, it will be better. I'll make sure that we have Dr. Jacobson send out a message to parents in the near future so that you start to have a sense of what the hours are and how RAP works with it. Because there are at least 5 or 6 different schedules in that school because each one is specialized for the age and needs of the students. But yes, we've taken into account each and every one of those programs, and there is a RAP.
Okay, and I guess I have one other question because, as I said, there are still a lot of questions on the Q&A that I think we can address on frequently asked questions for parents. Dr. Dolan, could you just talk a little bit more as to what the parents can expect to get after this meeting, like in reference to timing and so forth? You would get the survey sometime around what date? What date will the restore and recovery plan be posted? And I guess the big question, if I don't have children in the school any longer, would be the schedules that would be handed out for each of the schools, both elementary, intermediate. When would parents expect to get most of that information?
Right. So the hope would be either this afternoon or tomorrow morning, we will send out to all parents and staff an email, and included in that email will be a link to the entire plan. Let me be honest with parents, not every aspect of that plan is going to be interesting to you. It's what's required for the state. But we will send out a survey probably on Wednesday of this week, asking you about which plan you would like. And then I'll also work with the principals to get out the times as of now, should we be able to implement this hybrid plan. So we'll get those schedules out.
Okay, great. Because I think that once families have that information, they'll be better apt to ask the questions that are appropriate for them. And we can, kind of narrow this down a little bit if that's the case. And Dr. Dolan and I spoke a little bit this morning, and as much as we don't have a scheduled meeting for the board before September 1st, I have a feeling that we will be meeting again sometime during the month of August so that we can, I'm sure, talk about changes to what the plan, whether or not it be changes that we have to do in our own district or changes that are required by the state. And hopefully we can pare down some of the questions at that point in time, because people will have read all of the documents and will, maybe a good percentage of them will be answered in the documents, and, other questions can be answered at that point in time.
Sure. And I just remembered something else. If any parent, because I know parents are trying to plan during a crazy time, basically we're going to be very close in all programs across the grades. We're going to be very close to the early dismissal schedules that are posted on the website that you have gotten in printed calendars in the past. So that I'll make sure it's available on the website if some people, especially parents who are sending kids to Lincoln, so you have a better sense quickly of that, the approximate time, so you have a sense of what you're planning for. I understand the need for that.
Okay, so I'm going to continue with the meeting, but before the end, before we adjourn, I will go back and ask all members of the panels if they have any questions or want to clarify anything that's been discussed at this point in time, because I know it's a lot of information. There's a lot of different schedules and so forth, and I know questions come to people's minds. So we'll continue with our agenda items, and before we adjourn, we'll go back and see if anybody has any clarifications or questions that they want to address at this point in time. So, before I do that, I think I said thank you in the middle of this. I know there have been many committees put together that are made up of our staff, our administrators, parents who have helped us put this plan together. And if it wasn't working collaboratively with all of those groups, we would never be able to be where we are today. And Dr. Dolan, you do a wonderful job taking into consideration everybody's needs and so forth. And moving forward, we're in a good place. And I do know, as we've stated a couple times, that this is going to change a little bit. I can't quite, by the time we get off of this call, I'm sure there'll be something new from the governor that we'll have to look at in reference to the plan. So I thank everybody who's on the call who helped us put this plan together. And I look forward to having a good opening of the school in September, whatever it is by that point in time. So it is still a good month away. So I do want to thank everybody for that. Moving on, I'd like the board to approve the minutes of the board meeting held on July 9th, 2020. Do I have a second?
Second. It's Michael.
Michael, there you go. With all these people on, the pictures change too fast, I can't see anything. All in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Any not in favor? Okay, so that, Dana, you're good with that? I'd like the board to consider personnel items 1 through 28. Do I have a second?
Second.
Brendan? Dr. Dolan, I think you have a couple people that you would like to speak about, or?
I do.
Okay.
Today, I'm announcing with regret the retirements of 2 staff members who have given a total of 46 years of service to Westfield students. Trish Corcoran has been a kindergarten teacher in the district for more than 17 years, beginning her career at McKinley, then moving to Franklin. September 2008, she was among the group of dedicated educators who opened the doors at Lincoln to inaugurate our early childhood center. She has been an integral part of Lincoln's staff, and she will be missed. And Karen Lust. Karen's been a social studies teacher at Roosevelt for 29 years. Her passion for her field and her creativity in designing lesson plans, which emphasize problem solving and essential questions, are her great areas of expertise. Karen was instrumental in the formation of Girls Learn International. A point of pride for her was when she accompanied the club to the United Nations and her girls presented at the United Nations. She's a valued colleague who has mentored countless student teachers and new staff members, and she leaves an indelible mark on the Roosevelt community. We certainly wish Trish and Karen a happy and healthy retirement.
Thank you, Dr. Dolan, and I do appreciate all of those years of service to the district. Does anybody on the board have any questions about personnel items? Dana?
Michael Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Garrison,
Yes.
Brian Morrissey,
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg,
Yes, although I abstain from agenda item 19.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We're moving on to policies. Since we are a policy-based organization, making all of these changes to a regular platform, Brendan has a couple policy changes that we have to go over and vote in.
All right. Thank you, Peggy. First, I asked the board to suspend the bylaws to adopt a calendar change in policy item number 1. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brian. So this is a bylaw maneuver we've had to invoke several times this year to adapt to rapid changes. Our bylaws require two readings for all policies and calendar changes. But because of the timing, we need to make a change to the calendar today so that we can start the school year on a different day. Originally, school was supposed to start for students on September 9th. The first day will now be September 10th. And that allows our staff to have an in-service day to perfect the online and hybrid learning programs. In exchange for that, Columbus Day will now be a full school day. It's no longer going to be a staff in-service day. Any questions on the calendar changes? Thank you. Dana?
I just
Mike
want to, I'm
Beelan?
sorry,
Oh.
I just want to add that will be communicated to all parents and staff as well. When it's
Absolutely.
approved, once it's approved.
Yes.
Mike Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Rob Garrison,
Yes.
Brian Morrissey,
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Thank you. I ask the board to approve for first reading policy 2431.3. This is a heat participation policy for student athlete safety.
Second.
Thank you, Rob. This is a mandatory policy from the state. Pertains to making sure our student athletes stay safe during their summer workouts. Any questions? Dana?
Mike Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Rob Garrison,
Yes.
Brian Morrissey, Gretchen Oleg,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Thank you. And lastly, I ask the board to approve policy item number 3, which is again suspending our bylaws to approve the restart related policies. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kent. So this is new policy 1648, the Restart and Recovery Plan, 1649, Federal Families First Coronavirus Response Act, 1650, Remote Learning, which sets the standards for our remote instruction program, and 1651, mandatory 14-day quarantine for employees returning from high-risk travel areas.
Can I ask a question before we vote on this?
Yes.
So to the extent this is a living, breathing document that's going to be altered as we sort of move forward, what are the logistics of, just from a policy, from a procedure standpoint, of changing the document? Do we have to call a full board meeting and provide notice and come back every time? Or is there some delineation where, changes can be made that don't require the full board to vote? Because I imagine this is going to change a lot.
I imagine it's going to change many times. So we are, just like most of our policies, we have a policy that's the framework and then the regulation that details the implementation. This is similar to that. By the governor's executive order, we don't technically have to vote at all on the reopening plan.
Right, absolutely, Brendan. The board is not required to vote on the plan. I think the title of the policy is a bit misleading. You're not voting on the plan. Within the plan, the state, within the guidelines for the plan, the state required certain policies. Policy 1648 includes the policies that are in the plan. It does not improve the plan. So I don't know if we want to amend the name of it and call it Restart and Recovery Plan Policies. It's kind of redundant, but you're not approving the plan. You're approving the policies that the state said we had to approve within the plan.
Let's just delete the word plan off of the title, Restart and Recovery, and that just establishes the framework for it.
Okay.
All right, so I would make a motion that we amend the title of, and I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but the policy to remove the word plan.
Second.
Yeah.
That's amending policy 1648, Restart and Recovery Plan, to read as 1648 Restart and Recovery.
That makes sense. And that was the point I wanted to make as well, which is for those following along at home, that looks like when they go into the detail attached to the online agenda, well, where's the information that we're looking for? This is only some of it. The document that Dr. Dolan is going to be linking to in an email that goes out to all parents is going to look different and is not specifically what we're approving right here. Correct?
Correct.
Great.
Yep. So I think technically we have to vote on the motion before we can vote on the policy agenda item.
We're voting on the motion to amend the title, correct?
Right.
Mike Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Rob Garrison,
Yes.
Brian Morrissey,
Yes.
Gretchen Olig,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Hey, then I got a question. Is there a vaccine policy, and will it have to be revised once the COVID vaccine's out there and available?
We do have vaccine policies for vaccines as mandated by the state. I imagine we'd have to have guidance from the state as to whether we could mandate such a vaccine.
Okay.
Yes, I would agree.
Okay.
Are you ready to vote on the policy?
Any other questions? All right, Dana?
Mike Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Rob Garrison,
Yes.
Brian Morrissey,
Yes.
Gretchen Olig,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Gretchen, for raising the title issue. Make it clearer for everybody that's following along.
So, Dr. Dolan, just so the to the extent the regulation will change a lot, will there be sort of frequent public notices as to updates? Will the version that's on the website will be sort of refreshed on a weekly basis and all of that, right? And the board will be given notice of substantial changes?
Yes, and then also keep in mind that this is the required hybrid plan, but we still have to wait for the state to tell us whether we'll even be able to do a hybrid plan.
Right.
So, and part of our attention now is also turning to making sure that if we have to go to a distance plan, that all the pieces of that are clear and communicated to everyone. So there are a lot of things that we need to make clear and communicate, and hope for not too many more changes.
No, and I appreciate that. I'm trying to anticipate from the public's view. But I guess,
Sure.
right, and so I guess I just wanted, right, so, okay, thank you.
No, absolutely. I mean, right, it is certainly maddening for parents who are trying to figure out their own work schedules and their family lives. It is maddening for teachers. This is trying all of us. Let's be clear. And it's not just education. I mean, pick a field. Anybody you know, whatever field you work in, this has not been an easy time. And so I do appreciate the fact that people in the community are working together, are raising good questions and good suggestions, and we're paying attention to them. And we're just trying to do the best we can for our kids. And I would just argue, I don't care if you're 10 or you're 80, this is not an easy time for any of us, right? So the more we work together, hopefully the better solutions we'll come up with.
I just had, after Gretchen's question, I had one quick question. How is this all going to be communicated to parents? Will it be sent in emails? So should parents really go onto their Genesis account and ensure that their email addresses are accurate so that they are getting the most up-to-date information as often as it's sent out?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, please do that. Make sure your information is up to date. If you're not sure how to do it, call the school that your child attends and they can help you with it. You just reminded me of something a little bit different. We are hoping everybody stays well this year, but if somebody is sick in school, we have a plan the nurses have a plan where a student would be isolated. But if somebody is sick, we need a parent or an emergency contact to be able to get to the school quickly. We can't have that child in the building for an hour and a half, right? So in the forms that parents sign before the beginning of the year, we are asking, please make sure at least one of your emergency contact people are local, right? Because this is a different year and this illness is serious. So please, we're going to remind people when you complete all the forms before the beginning of the year, but please just give thought to who is an emergency contact, who is local, and who could get to the school quickly, should there be a reason to do so.
Dr. Dolan, since I know communications have already gone out and some will continue to go out today and the rest of this week, is there a way through Genesis to pull email addresses that have been updated to make sure that recent communications get sent to the newly entered email addresses?
We do that. Yeah, we do that regularly.
Okay. Just we want to make sure that nobody misses anything out if they don't update their email till tomorrow.
Yes, right. Agreed.
And I just got a text from somebody trying to look at all the things. It's currently down for maintenance.
Genesis is down for maintenance?
It is.
Yes. It's being worked on so that we're ready for the school year. I mean, we also send out to Edleo. I mean, they'll get my emails.
Okay. Well, and if you're on here and you're not getting emails and your child is expected back in school in one shape or form, please contact the district. They will know that you are getting the emails. And I'm assuming Mariana is on someplace on one screen here that she will be doing some updates, whether it's through Facebook, Twitter, or any of our social media, to letting people know that there's more information out there that they should look at. Marianne?
Yes, absolutely. I also want to say that every email that Dr. Dolan sends out, along with a whole lot of other important information, is posted on the website. So on the district page, at each school page, in the upper right-hand corner is a little window that says school reopening and COVID-19 information. You click on that and there are very easy individual boxes to click on. It'll say emailed updates or superintendent updates. It'll say distance learning and school reopening plan, mental health resources, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of information there, and to the point of the emails, if as a parent or a staff member who may not have seen an email from Dr. Dolan, literally, an hour or two after it goes out, it gets posted on the website. So please always check that school reopening COVID-19 information page on each of the school and district web pages. And yes, social media, I'll continue. Haven't been able to get to social media that much this summer, so I apologize, but we will continue to use that as a means of communicating as well.
Great. Thank you, Marianne. Let's move on to finance. Kent?
I'd like the board to consider items 1 through 13. I'm sorry, Brent, do you have a second?
Second.
Oh, thanks. I wasn't sure if you had a question or as a second. Thank you. Dana, do you want to talk about the reduced state funding?
Yes, so we were notified last month that the state aid that we were given notice of in March would be reduced by about $494,000. So our options were to either reduce the budget or to appropriate additional funds from the unallocated surplus. That is what I am recommending that we do so that we do not have to reduce our budget. We need to be able to have some flexibility in the budget for costs. You know, all the things that we mentioned earlier most of them have costs associated with them, which were not in the budget when we developed the budget because this hadn't happened. So we certainly don't want to reduce the budget by about $500,000. So we are allocating funds out of surplus to maintain our budget at the same level so that we can maintain all of the programs as budgeted.
Great. Thank you. Are there any other questions on the finance items from the board? Seeing no hands, I think we're ready for a roll call, Dana.
Mike Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Rob Garrison,
Yes.
Brian Morrissey,
Yes.
Gretchen Olig,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Dana. We're on to our last recognized public for questions or comments. I believe we're going to try and answer everybody's questions that they put up in the Q&A on a frequently asked question because some of them were repeats and would generate the same answer. I saw one question that we could probably clarify for parents, which was, if the teacher is being videotaped doing the lesson, will any of the students be in view of the camera? Something that we may want to think about, or will it just be the teacher and the front of the classroom?
Right. That has been spoken about certainly, and I think that's part of what as the teachers are working on this to try to make it the best they can, I think we'll be able to address that so that there isn't a concern about privacy of students. I would also say that I want to make one point clear. The students who are going to be logging on, right? Any of the students who are going to be logging on in the spring, we definitely had a number of students who shut off their camera, right? And perhaps shut off their audio as well. For a variety of reasons, we need to know the students are there. So separate from your question, but the teachers, as they're teaching, they need to see the students who are there for a lesson, not shutting off cameras, not shutting off audio. But the other question that was raised was from the classroom, and we can keep the privacy of the students. The focus can be on the lessons and any of the information that the teachers are sharing on their whiteboards or whatever they're using at the time.
Peggy, before you go on to another question, it's Rob Garrison. I know I mentioned this in one of the meetings, and I think Dr. Dolan, you said you're working on this. But you know what would be helpful is if you could do a one-pager or cheat sheet per type of rig, so that way, you know, it's short, maybe 10 or 12 bullet points versus someone have to read through all the documents, so that you can get as much of the pertinent info out to folks as possible in a very easy, readable fashion.
Agreed. Absolutely. We had a basic outline for it, but we have not completed it. But we have a sense of the different major parts we were going to put on it to make it easier.
A bullet point set for parents and then a bullet point set for students. Their expectations would be helpful.
Right.
So that there's uniformity across the board with what the district's looking for.
Agreed.
Okay, and the other question that I seemed to, as I scrolled down, is that I think we're going to have to do on the school-wide basis is understanding how the afternoon session will work. There seems to be a lot of confusion as to what that will look like on each different level. So I would just ask that we continue as we put these bullet points together to clarify how that afternoon session is going to work for in the elementary schools, in the middle schools, and at the high school.
Will do.
Okay, does any,
I was going to also, I saw a lot of questions from parents. I guess they wanted to hear from Dr. Weissman. Will he be able to speak during this meeting, or is that something we can address in the frequently asked questions?
Yes, I was thinking as I saw some of the questions, there probably could be, there actually has been a lot of focus on how to make sure students' IEPs are implemented at every single level. So I would imagine there's going to be a subcategory in the frequently asked questions to try to address that. Valid questions, no doubt. And I now see Michael or Dr.
Yes. I'm sorry, I was unable to switch over earlier. What are the specific questions? I apologize.
I think if you could just speak to the general implementation of the IEP programs
Right.
this coming school year.
The general guidance from the Department of Education is that we are going to follow IEPs, implementing accommodations and modifications to the greatest extent possible under the circumstances. We've planned with General Education Administration and are doing our best to make sure that students are getting whatever needs that they need, whatever needs are in the IEP, to, again, to the greatest extent possible based on the IEPs. It's going to look different for every student.
right, I would think it's an individual type of situation because every IEP is written differently for the student's needs.
It is highly individualized. It's hard to speak in general about special education, so it's easier to address specific questions about the ways in which we're going to implement special education IEPs, but it's very challenging, to say the least.
Dr. Weissman, are there any broad categories of things that we normally do that we're not going to be able to do this year?
Broad categories, in what sense? I mean, we're planning on implementing all our special programs, our behavioral programs, our ABA programs, our IPREP and LLD programs. We plan on implementing all of them to the same extent that we did last year when we went remotely. I'm hoping that we will be able to expand and offer more services in greater depth this year with some additional professional development and time to plan. Unfortunately, everything was very rushed at the end of last year, but I think we had the benefit of some time on our hands prior to the start of September.
Excellent.
And I guess my question to you, Dr. Weissman, is if your child has an IEP, will their case manager be reaching out to them, or how will they get the information in reference to their specific situation?
Yes, absolutely. Case managers have been working very egregiously at making sure that I'm sorry, not egregiously, but very, very hard at making sure that they're maintaining communication with parents, checking in on their students. They've been working all summer. They've been responding to emails, phone calls. So I think that they've been very responsive to the needs. I've gotten very little negative feedback from parents in the respect that they have not gotten their questions or concerns answered. Case managers are still the point of contact. They are responding within 24 to 48 hours in most circumstances, even though we're off this summer. We are continuing with summer evaluations. And I think we're a little bit ahead of the curve. There are a number of districts haven't even begun doing summer child study team evaluations, and we started July 6th. When it was announced that we could. So we've been working steadfastly at moving forward with providing special education services and trying to get students started with their IEPs, students who are not eligible last year, but who were evaluated this summer so that they can have programs in place for September. So we have been moving forward and progressing in that respect.
Thank you. Does anybody else have questions for Dr. Weissman? Okay, and my last thing that I saw Dr. Dolan quite a bit of, and I believe it's in the document that will be sent out to parents, is how quarantining will work and notification and all of that stuff. I believe, is that narrative given to us by the state as to how that's handled? And
that's exactly right. all the guidance for that, we follow whatever the current guidelines are from the New Jersey Department of Health. As a matter of fact, you'll see the link in the document that you'll receive. The link takes you to the current guidelines because I don't know when they're going to change. Right? They haven't. Some of them stay the same for a while, but some of them they do change. Additionally, I will tell you that public health always has worked closely with schools. As a matter of fact, school nurses are considered part of the public health system. They're not paid by public health, but they're considered part of the system because our school nurses get the guidelines from the local public health officers or the New Jersey Department of Health, and they are constantly interacting. When they notice a spike in a certain illness or something like that, they are on the phone with public health. So the contact tracing, for example, that is the responsibility of public health, our local public health. However, our nurses are in communication with them. And whatever the current guidelines are, again, they are in constant communication with our nurses and school physician. We update whatever they are and we communicate with them because that is just part of our role. So we do have in the plan what the current guidelines are for quarantine. And we will continue to make sure we have the most up-to-date ones. I have to thank one parent. I won't name the parent. The parent wrote to me recently. The parent was honest and said that his family is traveling to one of the states currently on the list requiring quarantine in New Jersey. His father fully expects to be able to quarantine his whole family when he gets back for the required amount of time. And his only question to me was, once I do that, will my child be allowed to attend the hybrid? Now that's the responsibility that we would expect from everyone. And we will absolutely follow whatever the guidelines are from the health department.
Okay. So if nobody on the board has any other questions, there was a lot of information put out here. Oh, Brendan?
Yeah, just one question. Maybe Brian Ocker can answer. Is there a way to download the questions and chat so that we can make sure that we answer all the questions?
Yes, I have the ability to download all the questions that have been asked today, so we will have them so that we can get answers up to everybody.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Brendan. So there was a lot of information today and a lot of information for parents to digest. So I encourage you to read your emails when you get them from your particular school. Please do answer our survey as to what you think is best for your family and your student. And we will continue to work on this plan. As I said, it's not on the schedule, but I do anticipate that the board will probably be getting together again sometime again before school starts to either approve changes to the plan or just to be here as a sounding board for other questions that parents have after they have the information in front of them. I did see a comment as to when would we be going back to evening meetings, and maybe at that point in time we could change back to evening meetings at our regularly scheduled time, whether it be 7 or 7:30. I do appreciate that parents are working and it's hard to give this much time in the middle of the day to get your questions answered. But please read all of the documents. If you have questions, your administrators, we will be back to clarify some things in the future. So does anybody else have anything else they'd like to add?
Peggy, it's Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Just one comment just about the plan. I had gone, if I was speaking from a parent perspective, who've had children in elementary, intermediate, and then students, seniors in high school. I've gone through the plan, and when I first started reading it, I had a lot of questions, and as I go through the plan, it answers a lot of questions. And I think we've answered a lot of questions here. And, I don't think there's necessarily a plan that can answer every question, but it is a very comprehensive plan that is well thought out. And, we're working with what we have. And like we said, the goalposts are continually changing, but the school district I certainly feel from a parent perspective, is adapting to try to address and support every student as best possible. That's all.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody else? So I'm going to put forth a motion that we adjourn today's meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Brendan? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? No. So thank you very much. And remember, we're continuing to work on this every day to, put out the best education plan for Westfield as we do in regular years and in these unprecedented years. So we appreciate your cooperation, and I look forward to seeing all the questions that have been asked in a summarization and make sure that we answer them appropriately. So thank you very much, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank you.
you.